I was 5 days old when I became an orphan. My mom perished because of IPV, intimate partner violence. My father was an alcoholic and abuser.
Her history is one that we often read about in pre-sentence report. You could have gone either way. Where do you pull the strength to want to help other people from a place of love and compassion?
As soon as I forgave that part of me,
Yes.
my father, my lens, it just shifted. We need to tell people intergenerational trauma is real. I believe is one of the variables that's affecting a lot of the youth today. Try to be as authentic as possible when you're doing anything that you're doing within the criminal justice system.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what do we have? We hold people's lives into our hands.
Welcome back to another episode of Who Judges the Judge, the podcast meant to make you question the way you judge the world around you. Today's guest is Nadia Ghanny. She is a professor at the University of Guelph-Humber, teaching classes on social law and justice.
And community corrections.
Community corrections being the important one because that is where she spends her time at her day job. We are going to get in a very deep discussion on what it looks like to be trying to help not only offenders escape the cycle of recidivism, but also teaching the next generation of individuals involved in the justice system, specifically in corrections, and what that path looks like. Nadia, oh my God, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. We go back many, many years.
Yes.
You reached out to me to come and teach your class, and I was coming in and doing workshops, trying to give, the defense perspective to young people who were trying to enter the world of probation, correctional officers, law enforcement generally. And through that, you shared a little bit of your story with me. And I wanted you on the show for two reasons. One, I think you offer such a great perspective to our viewers on what is happening right now in criminal justice. A perspective I can't share as a defense lawyer. You come at things from a very different angle, and I think it's a really important view, and I think it's really important for me to be sharing all different sides of the criminal justice sphere. But I also want to start a little bit with your own personal journey in life, like, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Yeah, you recall those personal journeys I told you about when we sat down and we spoke.
Yes.
When you came to my classes to do presentations.
Yes.
So where I was born in Guyana.
Yes.
That's British Guyana in South America. I came to Canada when I was approximately 12 and a half, 13 years old. But before that, my life, I was born into a very impoverished kind of family situation. My father was an alcoholic and abuser, and my mom perished because of IPV, intimate partner violence.
Yes.
I was 5 days old when I became an orphan, and I was 9 days old when I came to the house that with my foster family, and that's the name I carry, Ghanny.
Oh, that's your foster family.
Yes.
See, I did not know that.
Yes. So what happened was after
when you say that your mom perished, your dad murdered your mom.
Yes.
When you were 5 days old.
I was 5 days old.
And so when you say you became an orphan, what happened to your dad?
Oh, so what he did was he picked all of us up because it's 8 of us, 7 girls, 1 boy, and he dropped us on the driveway of the Ghanny's residence. In my country, the Ghanny's were very privileged at the time.
Okay.
So my mom and dad worked for my parents. Okay. And what happened was they loved my mother. And she used to she used to do all the household duties for them and things like that.
Right.
My father, I actually don't know what he did. He probably was the gardener or something or whatever. But I knew he just drank a lot. And he would go out and he would sell. He was an artist, by the way. And when he drank, he made the most creative stuff. And he would sell, but then he would buy alcohol. Anyways.
And so your dad brought all of the children, all 8 of you, back to the Ghanny residence.
Plopped us in the driveway.
And then went back to your mom.
And left, yeah.
And how much later was it that he killed your mom?
They were out, and they came back, and they saw all of us in the driveway. And my grandmother said it was a rainstorm that day. So we were all... So for me, everybody was okay, except for me. They couldn't afford milk, my parents. As I said, they were very impoverished.
Right.
And so they were feeding me sugar and water. So what happened was I was kind of emaciated and, I had like a lot of infections and things like that. So they took me to hospital and everything was okay after.
Okay.
And then it was like, here I am, so many years later. But
How old were you when you learned that history?
I was 11 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for the first 11 years of your life,
Yeah.
you grew up believing that your adopted parents were your real parents.
Yes.
Okay.
I
And
hear
did you stay with your siblings? Did your adoptive parents take in the whole lot of you and raise you?
So my father was he was a very kind of practical man.
Okay.
And adopted father, I
Yes.
should say. And what happened was he took them all,
Right.
but he placed them into homes
Okay.
of their own relatives. His goal and objective was to have us birthdays and kind of like whatever Christmases and so to still be together.
Okay.
And in some things, when you're thinking something, it doesn't actually manifest the way you want it to in reality.
Yes.
So when he placed them in homes, a lot of them were abused by their, I guess, the people that they placed them in. Some of them ran away and things like that.
Okay.
One, she was the second eldest. She was given the opportunity to stay at the Ghanny's.
Yes.
And they asked her, would you like to be adopted? And she said, no, I want to maintain my name. But they said, we will take you, but we will adopt eventually this baby. I was 9 days old at the time. But you're not allowed to tell her that you're siblings. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up with her. I just thought she was, the house, or working in the house kind of thing. Because we had a big house and we had like kind of housekeepers and things like that. So they were very privileged people. So I just thought
And did you grow up with that privilege? Did you grow up enjoying the same privilege that the Ghanny's were giving their own children?
I did.
And your own biological sister didn't receive that?
No.
Do you still keep in touch with her?
No. Well, we have it's a love-hate relationship.
Right.
For the longest time.
Jealousy?
Yes.
I can only imagine what that feels like to know that that's your biological sister and yet she's being treated as part of the family and you're being treated like the help.
Yes. So I had an amazing grandmother who actually kind of like, matriarch of her family.
And was that like on the Ghanny side or was that your biological grandmother?
Ghanny side.
Okay, adoptive grandmother.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know anything about my biological family.
At all. Like even the extended.
No, nothing. Yeah. So it's just like if they come now and they say, oh, I am so-and-so, I'll be like, oh, okay, hi. There's nothing there.
Right.
It's always been my family, the name that I carry.
Yes. So 11 years old, you learn that you had this unbelievably traumatic start to life.
Yes.
How do you process that? What does that mean to you, if anything? Because at that point, your family was the Ghanny's.
Yes.
So you learn that you have this whole other history that you didn't know about.
Yes.
What do you do with that?
What I do with that, I actually, when my grandmother started telling me the story,
she
says, I had enough of this. I need to tell you the truth. And the only reason is we were coming to Canada, where we're going to be dispersed, our family. That's another podcast, Jordana, about that, how we came to Canada and why we left.
Okay.
So basically, I guess they were in the process of doing my papers.
Right.
So they had to and my father was still alive and they need.
Was he in jail?
No, somewhere in Guyana, but he was still alive.
Okay.
But the adoption, our government basically state that if a parent is alive, they still have to seek kind of permission or have him be part of that process.
He has to with you leaving the country.
Exactly. Okay. That's what they were trying to. And so I was actually scared that I would be removed from the home.
Right.
So we used to go every single day downtown. My mom would take me to the lawyer's office. And I actually loved when I got what I got. I actually loved the lawyers that helped me.
Like you got the permission to come to Canada and be formally adopted.
Because else if it wasn't, I would be back with my father, who I don't know.
Right.
Right. And it didn't make sense to me. Right.
So how is it that he murders your mom when you're 9 days old and at 11, he's like still out wandering the streets?
So he never got charged for anything because they said it wasn't kind of like a homicide. Like we would go say it was a homicide or everything. No, they don't have that stuff at the time. It's like in the 60s, 65, like,
Right.
you know. Um,
So back then, a man could just kill a woman and
and depending on
it just
how,
was what it
right?
was?
Depending on how it was, kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
So zero accountability.
zero accountability. Now it's probably a bit better,
Okay.
but it's still, there's a lot of things to prove and forensics and things like that. It didn't have that back, especially when you're living in a country and you're poor and you're impoverished and you don't have those kind of resources, kind of thing, right? You know, I said biology, it's not. You don't have
I
to be
get it.
biology
I get it.
to have, yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And I learned that over the years.
Yes.
you
Your
know?
family can be who you make
Oh,
it sometimes.
yes. And most of the time, my family are made up of my colleagues, my beautiful colleagues at work, and who are like my friends.
Right.
Of course, my partner, Peter.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's strength for me, But my sister said to me one day when she was little, he was beating her so badly to the point of pulp, like blood was all over, that there was no police, nothing. And I'm just giving you an example of
Right.
that. She had to go to the army. There was an army base next door to where they were training.
Yes.
And she asked the soldiers to come for help, to help her.
And did
to,
they?
To help. Yeah, I think they did help take him off of her because he was just beating her up so badly. And they couldn't do it because they were all kids, right? They were all
Right.
young,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah.
And the girls.
Yes, they were girls, yeah. So she was the eldest. She was the one that told me that. She says, yeah, he used to beat her to a pulp. Most of my sisters, well, the one that I know that I'm telling you about, she still sees a psychiatrist today forever.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think there's some trauma that people just don't come out of.
Yes.
They
Yes.
figure out how to work around
Yes.
or not. Some
Yes.
people never figure out how to work around,
Yes.
but there's certain traumas that you don't get over. You
No,
can't get past it.
You don't get over it.
And it stays with you. And
Yeah.
that's
And I
understandable.
hope that during this podcast that we can kind of explore just, a little briefly about intergenerational trauma. Because for the longest point, and that's even with offenders in the system too.
Yes.
Right? But when we talk about, like my family, we're talking now, there was a long time that I disliked them. I hated my father.
Right.
Oh, I hated my father. I could say
course.
that. I hated him. And I don't know. It was just like,
I
don't
don't
know.
think anyone listening here is going to judge you poorly on that one. I can tell you that. But you say it today without hate in your voice.
Yes, because it was a time, I don't know, maybe over the period of my time was studying and I took a great course and I thought, oh my God, it's the greatest brain science ever. I love this. It helped me. It helped me see through and past all of that.
Wow.
And because it helped me, I actually am a better person in terms of how I see my clients,
Yes.
how I deal with people, and how I deal with personal trauma. And everybody's got a story, I believe, and a narrative, what that story is like. And so it changed my lens.
You could have gone either way.
Yes.
You could easily be
Yes.
an offender of the type that you help. You could easily be, incarcerated, around or going through the system, a drug addict, an alcoholic. Your history is one that we often read about in pre-sentence reports.
Yes.
And when you read about them in pre-sentence reports, it explains how someone has made some really poor choices for themselves for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
But that's not the direction you took.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
When I was doing my training, in the domain that I do my my professional,
like in corrections.
Yeah, in my correction. I remember one of my instructors told me, she told the class, remember, you're here and you represent, the system, you represent like the offenders and whatever you will be servicing, right?
Yes.
Please don't ever think that you're better just because you never know if you will be on that other side because of whatever experiences or anything like that.
Right.
And I always remember, and that was so profound for me. Like that was, and I thought about it and I thought, wow, that made me think that, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got that narrative. And easily I could have been over there rather than sitting on the other side.
Yes.
Right?
With your history, it's unbelievable that you didn't. And especially with, addictions and alcoholism in your DNA already.
Yes.
A history of domestic violence. And I know you ended up in a situation for a shorter period of time, but still ended up as a victim of domestic violence yourself, pulled yourself out. You're now in a, beautiful, healthy, loving relationship, but you did work to get yourself to that point of view. Now, did you want to go into law enforcement? like, what's the motivation for that? Because in my mind, I'm like, for sure you wanted some sort of retribution for what happened to your mom, because she never got that. No one was held accountable for your mother's murder, which is horrific. Is that why you went into law
You
enforcement, or did you want to help people? What was the
you
perspective?
you asked amazing questions, and because this is exactly, I wanted to do law.
Okay.
Because when I saw the magistrates in my country
Yes.
working for me, and magistrates in my country is a British system, right?
Yes.
So they wear the white wigs and the black gowns. So my father thought he would take me to the courts and stuff every once in a while, and we would see the magistrates, and some of my uncles actually were magistrates, distant uncles kind of
Yes.
thing. And I would be like, oh my God, I want to be a lawyer, and I want to have people pay for what they do. And that was my father. I was talking about my dad.
Of course.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
Oh, I think I was about 11. That was the time, because that was the time
so
that
you
I was
learned what
getting into.
happened, and you're like, I want someone to pay.
Yes, yes, and until all the way through adolescence and my late teen years, and even my early 20s,
Okay.
I wanted him to pay for that.
Of course.
Because, however, that course changed. The idea didn't change, but the thought didn't change. The course did change. And what I mean by that is the fact that I wanted to do everything for law, and I was going towards law school in terms of do my studies and making better grades and things like that. So that was the aim. And I started to working these stepping stone jobs. I remember one time I sent you something, it was like a resume of mine or something, and I said, can you look this over for me? And you said, oh, now you wanted to get into banking? And I said, or insurance? And I said, no, that was the only companies that hired me.
Yes.
During the time I was putting myself through school, because
Yes.
I was self-supporting and trying to save up for all that stuff, right?
Yes.
And this was the time Peter just came into my life as well too. There was the 1988, 1989 kind of thing. So yeah, and that's when I was starting to kind of save up and do whatever. And I started to volunteer in the 90, 91, 90, 93, let's say 90, 92, 93. I started to volunteer with probation.
Okay.
Yes. And so I started to, I was like a volunteer probation officer and whatever. And I remember somebody within that sector said to me, do you really want to do law school? And I said, yeah, I want to do law school. And I would tell them my history and stuff. And they were like, yeah, but there's other ways you can do this, And I said, oh, no, I want to do law. And I was so good at when I was volunteering and things like that. And I thought, I love this. This is good. And it was just looking at things and I saw how the other officers did reports and things like that. I didn't do all those. But I know, I just thought, okay, let's see how this goes, kind of thing. And I don't know, because this now become 2003 where I got a contract into the domain that I'm, in law enforcement field,
Yes.
what I'm doing, working with offenders. And I thought, okay. But prior to that, I remember my eldest sister, she's deceased in 2010, but this was way before. She was talking to an aunt of ours and stuff, and she says, Daddy, what do you do for a living? And I told her, and she says, oh my God, that's so ironic, Nadia. And I said, why? She says, you work with people like your victims like your mother and perpetrators like your father.
Wow.
And I thought,
So powerful.
that was so powerful.
Yes.
That was powerful. And I didn't realize it up until that time. Like, I'm already in my domain that I'm my profession,
Right.
but I never really thought about it like that. But yes, but I was doing it unconsciously.
Yes.
But when she put that into that kind of like those words, I thought, yeah, I am. But unconsciously it was. And I remember the first year that I got my caseload, 95% of them was domestics. And I thought, oh, really? Seriously?
And so did you, back then, and obviously you've been doing a lot of work since, but did you approach those offenders from the perspective of you need to be punished? Or did you approach those offenders from the perspective of I need to help you to make better choices and address sort of the underlying issues so that you can stop this behavior?
No,
You wanted them punished.
I wanted them punished. And that didn't last a long time. It was as soon as I forgave that part of me,
Yes.
my father,
Yeah.
my lens, it just shifted.
Wow.
Something shifted.
That's huge.
That shifted. And when they're in front of me and we're chatting,
Yes.
I see them, not what they do. Beverly McLaughlin, I'm reading her book right now.
Okay.
And she said something so profound. She says her mentor told her, it's not what you see in front of you, is what that person can become. That
Wow.
is so powerful.
That is so powerful because you can shift that
Yes.
as someone in corrections. And,
Yes.
we chatted a little bit before we got started here, but where my job ends, yours begins.
Yes. Yes.
And so, I help people who are accused of criminal offenses throughout their time in court. You sort of pick up afterwards. And
Yes.
so your impact can be one, depending on how you approach your job and your duties and your role, to help guide them out of the system, or you can keep them stuck in the system and you can keep them stuck in that trap if you want to.
Yeah.
There's ways that you can approach your job, as a law enforcement officer. You also are teaching the next generation of individuals going into law enforcement in a variety of formats. So when I was coming in to teach your classes, I remember speaking to students who wanted to go into probation, into parole, into corrections. Some individuals were doing your course as sort of pre-law school
Yes.
that wanted to go into law. Some wanted to go into defense, some wanted to go into crowning. Like, it was across the board. It wasn't, one different type of practice. And my goal was to try to open up people's minds and pay attention to almost that same very principle that you were guided by your prof, which is, do not just look at what this person is accused of doing. You have to look at the person.
And I think when you see that,
Yes.
it's a whole different narrative.
Yes.
And I find that there's it was always going to be biases and prejudices, but it's less of. But my students, getting back to my students, I work with some of my students, and I am so proud of that. I have the satisfaction, not having children as I made a choice not to procreate.
Yes.
But I do that in a different capacity. And every single year I get this, I'm on a high when I see people either follow me into my profession or they go off. And I'm doing law school references forever. You know how many I have right now? Oh my God. So, it's all, or policing. Policing is another one that they get into and they want to become, part of the system, to help part of the system. And why? And I say that the thing about it, and what I try to instill, Jordana, with them all the time, is the fact that try to be as authentic as possible when you're doing anything that you're doing within the criminal justice system.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what do we have? We hold people's lives into our hands. We do. We literally do when
Yes.
when we write whatever it's like, a parole investigation or a pre-sentence report, whatever it is that you're doing. When you're case managing everything, make sure that you do it as best as you can, truthful as you can, genuine, because you don't want to put anything in there. This will stay with somebody forever, and we do our best in terms of working within the criminal justice system forum. And we try to, and we always compare to two systems: Canada. We go to Japan. Japan, United States. So many different systems.
Oh,
And the
interesting.
systems that more aligned to us would be certain things like the UK, for example, in terms of how they rehabilitate their offenders within the system. The states, yes, but not so much. Very punitive.
Yes.
I think they're punitive across the board.
So let's talk about that, because I recently put out a little clip talking about how inhumane the conditions are right now in our remand centers, where we are housing, the majority of individuals housed in remand centers have not been convicted of a crime yet. This is where, as you know, other detention centers where individuals are held pending trial. And I was talking about how inhumane these institutions are and just how horrific it is that people who are presumed innocent are being treated in this fashion. The number of people who commented, good, jails should be horrible, lock them up 10 to a cell, they shouldn't see the light of day, they should be imprisoned for the rest of their life, throw away the key. Like, this mentality of, if you've been accused of a crime, you should be sent away for life, obviously is a complete affront to the rule of law that they seem to be speaking in tones supportive of. Like, if you support the rule of law, you have to support the presumption of innocence as the foundation
That's right.
of the rule of law.
That's
So
right.
you can't tell people you need to respect the law and at the same time tell them
No.
lock them up, throw away the key, you don't need a trial. But for those people who think that our system is not punitive enough, and that if we had longer sentences and if we had worse conditions in the jail, society would be safer. What do you say to those people as someone who works in law enforcement and not doing any work on the defense side?
The fact is that people in society, the public, okay, public perspective will always be the same because it's emotionally charged. They're emotionally charged when they hear about a crime, or
Right.
they hear about, for example, that stray bullet that will kill somebody, and you're not even part of it, and you're in your home, and it kills. You know what I mean?
Horrible. We just had the 8-year-old boy that
that's
just
right.
got shot and killed in his own bed.
Exactly. Horrific. But people are. That's why they're emotional.
So,
and I think,
what do you think we do? Because I think we can all agree that nobody wants this influx of carjackings and
No.
home invasions and
No.
robberies, right?
No.
Like, I make no bones about it. I
No.
have very expensive cars and I have
Yes.
things that I love.
Yes.
And, I collect things. And if someone broke into my house, it would be a problem for both of us. So, that's just the reality. So I'm not trying to encourage more of this behavior, but I know that just summoning someone to jail for 5 or 10 years with our current, penal system isn't working because they're not getting the help that they need. They're not getting the rehabilitation. They're not getting the education. They're not getting the employment opportunities. They're coming out after serving these lengthy sentences, what we call lengthy here in Canada as, double digits. And then what, right? They have to figure out a way to house themselves, feed themselves. They're sent back to the same environment that they came from originally. And so there's a lot of recidivism.
I see an evolution of things that's happening within the criminal justice system.
What do you see
And I've
from your
seen
side?
that my side, I've seen that, there are resources that we're implementing, new roles with individuals that help individuals as coming out into society, back into the system. It's something that's just implemented, right?
Okay.
Or something just started. And so it's not something that you're going to see any progress with probably as you want to see, but it's there because there's certain things that I've seen. God, I don't know how long I've been in the system now, probably over 20 years. That dated me, but I've seen things change. And I've see things kind of progress.
For better or worse? Because
better.
The public thinks that we have more crime, more street crime, more violence, more guns. That's what we're seeing. That's what the news is telling us.
And that's what the news is. And you know what? I don't look at mainstream journalism anymore, okay? I listen to podcasts.
Okay.
And I listen to and that's where I get my information from, right? But sometimes it's just hype. I don't know. Maybe it's just something that's...
So you're not seeing increases in your line of work?
And in my line of work, we see certain kind of reoffenses with certain petty things and whatever, but not... Probably DV, IPV would be the one that I call...
Domestic violence
yes,
and intimate partner violence.
Stressors and things like that causes certain things.
Okay.
Well, not to minimize that though, right? I'm not minimizing the...
Of course
the
not.
effects,
No.
But it's just the fact that, we know why these things probably happen.
Okay.
So I could see that in rural areas and stuff like that.
You don't do a lot of work with youth under 18, correct?
Right.
You work
correct.
with over 18.
Over, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of talk right now about youth crime and an influx in youth crime.
That I've seen.
You have?
I've heard. Yes.
Okay. And that's something that's being spoken about, I'm assuming, amongst your colleagues, because I'm also seeing far more youth getting involved in far more violent offenses.
Yes.
What does your side chalk that up to? I know what my side chalks that up to, so I'm so curious.
Well, there's a lot of variables that one could say that why this happens.
We blame social media.
Social media is one thing, right? But you see the generation, it's generational, right? The generation, maybe in two generations ago, maybe we didn't see as much. Now we're seeing more. I could be wrong about that, but basically, from what I've seen,
you see it as intergenerational.
Yes, exactly, kind of thing.
So when parents are involved in the system, you're seeing their kids getting involved.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And it doesn't even have to be parents; it could be somebody indirectly to them,
Okay.
right? Peers or things like that. But you know what? When we talk about intergenerational trauma,
Yes.
I think there's a lot of intergenerational trauma with the youth. And that's why maybe one of the things we see is more of this situation. Where are their outlet? Where are they getting? They don't have probably that outlet. They don't have anybody, safe space, safe person, thing to do or talk to or to be with or things to do. And so they're just lashing out. And they're doing it with groups. You've seen the swarming. I think they're calling it swarming. I don't know that word. And so there's a
I
lot.
can't say much. I represented one of the girls.
Okay, so don't worry. But the fact is that I'm just giving you an example
yes.
what I read in the papers, right?
Yes.
And so for me, I'm just thinking it has to be a combination of everything. That's the reason why I told you overall, since I did my doctorate, I've shifted my whole sense of my lens. And we need to tell people that intergenerational trauma is real, because this is, I believe, is one of the variables that's affecting a lot of the youth today. And not only the youth in general, the population that I deal with, however, the youth, because we're talking about that right now, right? And there's a lot of resources that's not at the school level. And I think that this curriculum of like a secondary school, even elementary, needs to be changed to include things like, like soft skills, problem solving. A lot of the times when our when I see offenders or whatever, individuals in trouble or going through something, it's about problem solving skills.
Right.
A simple thing like that, and it's elemental to the foundation, to build stronger foundation. And
it's interesting you mentioned that it should be weaved into the curriculum. So
yes.
And I agree. I never really thought about the push to change the actual school curriculum for as long as I've been a part of this system. So 15 years now, I've been involved in different community organizations, and I speak on a lot of panels, as you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of, anti-violence, anti-gang, anti-gun, just community resources that are meant to help assist youth in making better choices.
Yes.
And there's been a push for counseling and programming for so long, and over the last 15 years, all we have seen is a decrease in what's available. Basketball courts being, removed or being overly policed to the point that youth now don't feel like that's a safe place that they can go to anymore. There's no more after school programs, no more breakfast clubs. There's no more mentorship.
That's right.
For youth. And I've said for a long time, if we did a better job of educating youth under the age of 12, making better choices, problem solving, coping skills, which is huge.
Yes, that's huge.
Then if we gave that opportunity to youth under the age of 12, which is the age at which an individual could be arrested in Canada, then we would definitely be in a position where people over 12 and therefore arrestable are making better choices and having better options. And I think employment, education, and coping
that falls into that's what I think too. That's exactly how I thought. And the thing about it is that who writes or makes a policy for the curriculums of schools? I don't know.
So how do we change that?
So how do you change that?
Yeah.
Well, that would be a lot of advocacy.
We got to lobby the Ministry of Education.
The Ministry of Education.
I know, but nobody teaches financial literacy at all.
And those are the basic things.
Yes.
And talking about basic necessities of life, these are the basic skill sets that's needed for an individual to go out there after they become of age, to go out on your own, right, as a young adult. And so they don't have that. And if they don't have that, their lives is going to be, I'm sorry, it's not pessimistic. It's being practical,
right?
And objective to say that it's probably going to be something that is not going to be improving their quality of life.
No, I mean, if we don't help teach people and give people the opportunity to make better choices, you can't expect them to make better choices. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to make better choices, but we've created a system where they don't have the opportunity to do different or to do better or to make better choices or to know any better. Even, I get a lot of people commenting about how if jails were harsher, then people would do the things that would avoid them from going to jail.
I don't think that's a deterrent.
I don't think it's a deterrent. No. And I also don't think it can be a deterrent when we're not teaching youth what the consequences of their actions would be. Yeah. The number of people that end up in my office charged with firearms offenses have no appreciation for the fact that they can go to jail if they're caught with a gun. They're genuinely surprised that they're facing jail time for having a gun on them, as opposed to using that gun or doing something. You know,
Yeah.
they'll look at me and they'll
Yeah.
say, "But miss, I wasn't robbing anyone. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just need to protect myself because of the
Yeah.
area that I live in. I don't have a
Yes.
choice."
Yes.
And I kind of, put my hands up. I'm like, we'll do what we can. But the reality is, if you're convicted of
Yes.
being in possession of a loaded, prohibited firearm, you're likely going to jail.
These are the consequences. Yeah.
And then we have people on the other side who don't think they're going to jail for long enough.
Well, yeah, those are the ones that we're talking about, that the public. The public will always be emotionally charged about something. And public opinion matters a lot.
What's a politician?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? The individual with the loaded gun, oh yeah, I didn't know the consequences. And sometimes, literally, they don't really know the consequences.
They don't. It's
So,
not even,
It's
how can it possibly be a deterrent if we're not teaching people that this is what the consequences are? There's no course in school that tells young people, especially, educating them on the type of crimes that they're becoming involved in. By the way, if you commit a home invasion with a firearm, you're looking at, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on what happens. And if someone in your group, by the way, shoots someone in the individuals that you're robbing, you also can be charged with that shooting, even if the gun was in your hand. Like, people don't have an appreciation of what the law is. And yet we expect that not only should they be deterred from this behavior, but that they should automatically know what the potential consequences are.
Yeah. And that's the lens that person wears, that young person.
Yes.
Because the person says, yeah, and oh no, but I was protecting myself. And how can you argue with that?
Oh, no, I know.
Because there's so much violence out there. Yeah, he is protecting himself because of the neighborhood probably he lives in.
And yet nobody wants to fix that.
No.
I say it all the time. I'm like, you want to criticize the 15-year-old kid who's walking around with a gun. Why aren't we criticizing the neighborhood that he is forced to live in, where he doesn't feel safe enough, that he feels like he needs to carry around that gun? Because 15-year-olds in Rosedale aren't feeling like they need to carry a gun for their own protection.
No.
If they have a gun, it's because they think it's cool.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with their own sense of insecurity in the neighborhoods they're walking through.
I wanted to say something about victim mentality, but I thought, I don't know.
Say it.
I'm thinking how to craft it, how to kind of.
Just put it on the table. Come
I don't
on.
want to offend anybody, but
I do. I do.
No,
I think that we are in a society where everyone thinks they are a victim when they're not actually victim. I think we throw around that word way too easily. I think trauma is overused, overabused. I had a woman stalking me for 3 days on social media because I didn't stand up for her when she complained about being traumatized by a dick pic.
What's a dick pic?
A photograph of a man's penis that's sent to
Oh,
you.
a dick.
Literally.
Okay.
A picture. An unsolicited picture was sent to her. She blew up I had nothing to do with it. I didn't represent the guy. I have nothing to do with this at all. It's not even my practice. I don't defend people charged with sexually based offenses. Like, I'm so far removed from this case. But don't tell me you're traumatized by an unsolicited photo of a part of someone's anatomy. And I'm not saying it's appropriate to send, but
Of course.
Let's not call that trauma. I can't. So we throw that word around, I think, far too much. I think people take on a victim mentality far too easily. And I think they allow themselves to stay in that victim mentality, and it actually hurts them. It never hurts the person who put them in that place.
Yeah. I think sometimes when we think about victim mentality, that is, yes, thrown around a lot, just like anxiety is. People are like, oh, I'm anxiety for this, whatever. That victim mentality has created a lot of problems, I think, for a lot of communities in our world or in our country. Let's talk about, our country.
Yes.
And we see it every single day. And because of that perpetuating kind of ideology, that really hurts. And you see that kid there who's got a firearm and whatever, that he's part of that too. He's part of that.
Tell
what
me,
I'm talking about.
Describe that.
Let's say he lived in a family and the family went through certain kind of trauma and they never got over that trauma, but they just continue to perpetuate it. And then the kids got the whole kind of that experience from them. Now kind of somehow it consumes them. And it's like bitterness and it's anger. And they're like, yeah, everybody owes me something. And I need to get by because you need to give me. And we have that. And I have people that tell me that. I have people that come in front of me and they say that to me. and
Like
they
they
think that
think
they're
they
entitled
owed.
to that because of whatever trauma, that historical trauma that they went through, or not even them, but their, let's say, where they're from, or
Okay.
their from their history or their roots. And I always say to them, yeah, well, you're not promised anything. This is my feedback to them, or
Right.
my response. It happened, but we need to move on from that. But take that and learn it and use it as a lesson, and build resilience towards that.
Did you ever have a victim mentality?
Um,
Did you ever walk through life at like any point in your life and think like, poor me, the world owes me, because you could.
I could have done that. I
Did
don't.
you though?
And to answer your question, like I said, no, I never did. However,
Yeah.
when I'm by myself,
Yes.
and sometimes I feel sorry for myself,
Okay.
and I would say something like, "All this happens to me, just me. It happens to. Yeah, I'm just always going to be this kind of like, I always thought I was God's experiment. I'm an amoeba, and He's experimenting. The universe is experimenting with me to see how much more I could take." And so, and everybody else benefits from my trials and tribulations. But that was just thoughts. And now those thoughts, I don't even know where those thoughts are. They're piled away somewhere with a back compartmentalized in a chest. I need it sometimes. I'll take it out and go, oh my God. But I can't feel sorry for myself anymore. And I think that's what I've come to a place in my life where I'm pretty strong. I'm a pretty resilient person. And
I wouldn't even qualify that with pretty. I'd be you're fucking resilient, man. Like I don't, given your start in life, and I know, we've just touched on some of the other sort of, like you call them, trials and tribulations that you've overcome, teenage years and into your 20s, but like you were never a drug addict. You never
No,
turned to drugs.
no.
You never turned to alcohol.
No.
Like you always tried to choose a path that would be better for you and
Yeah.
better your situation and help others.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where do you draw the strength to be like, despite everything that my life was about and how difficult it's been to like navigate life as a construct, where do you pull the strength to want to do better for yourself and also help other people from a place of love and compassion?
I think that a lot of that comes from that it's okay. This is really personal. It comes from a place where I think my mother would have been, and she didn't, and she wanted so much more for me, and so I have to honor that. I don't know. That sounds really,
No, I think it's
it's
beautiful, and you're saying this as
and
someone who had
even though
had 5 days with your
yes,
mother.
yes. But even if I didn't know her, I heard stories about her. And I do think I used to call her stupid,
Okay.
believe it or not. I said, this woman kept on this abuse.
Right.
Then I got older and I understood, why maybe she endured what she did and things like that. Like my sisters would say, he would beat her. And then in an hour, she'll go and, oh, hi, honey. Are you okay? Do you want like that? And I thought, this woman was so stupid. But then I got a better perspective as I got older, as I told you. I got more educated in
Yes.
terms of what I was studying, and I understood it. But I still want to honor her because I just wish that, like, she was a woman. I represent that core for me, and that femaleness. And she gave birth to me. She really thrived for me, I believe. 5 days old, she couldn't give me much, but she gave me life. And I want to do that. And for my grandmother, who actually was the person who took care of me after the fact.
Yes.
So those two women in my life, they gave up both gave up their lives for me. My grandmother did give up her life for me, kind of thing. It was just, everything was revolved around me to give this orphan the best she could have and her family. And so I honor that. But I also believe as I got older, I don't know what it was, why I became into my profession and why I'm so focused and I have a passion for it. And I do believe it was my purpose. I do sincerely believe. Can I tell you something a little without getting into too much? I don't want to talk.
Of course.
I was seeing this person that came to see me.
Yes.
And wanted to give some consent or something like that. And as they were doing whatever they were doing, I was just had a moment and I was reflecting on it. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, I love this. I love what I do. It was just this kind of bliss that came over me. And when they talk about flow, I was in a moment of flow. And I thought, oh wow, I love what I do. And this is now over 20 years. So I'm doing something right, and it confirms for me what I'm doing. This is what I'm supposed to do.
1,000%. If anyone has ever been in any of your classes, heard you lecture, heard you speak, saw the way your students interact with you, there's no question. And I don't know, obviously, I'm not privy to the work that you do with any
No.
offenders or
Yes,
in
yes.
the correctional facility, but like seeing the way that the students receive information from you, it's like they're not just there to get through your class.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just getting like a stamp on their report
Yeah.
card. They learn from you, they take in what you have to say, and that's huge.
Yeah.
That really is, because it's not only that you're, feeding them, but you're also helping to set the tone for the rest of their lives. And they're going out into the justice system in whatever capacity they're going into, and they're going to affect people's lives. It's a gift that you're not only giving to each of these students, but you're giving to the system in general and trying to change the way that, they might otherwise approach their job.
And I think that question too, you asked me that loaded question. I think
I've asked you a lot of loaded questions this hour. Which one?
But why I do what I do, and what gives me that resilience. And I think also what adds to that is your environment, right?
Yes.
And whether it's your personal environment at home, which adds to that, but also my working environment. I have amazing colleagues. I have to tell you, I've never had an office like I have.
Wow.
And they make it so much amazing and privilege for me to be there, to do what I do.
Yes.
And that makes a difference. Because I always say to my students, when you go out into the work field, don't expect anything. Have no expectations of anything except yourself. So if you go to work and you want to make friends, don't expect to make friends. You're there to do a job.
Right.
However, it's a bonus if you make friends and if you connect with people. If you connect with them on a professional level, sure. But if that goes beyond, and that's a social level, you go out sometimes for drinks, or you go out for dinner, or on the weekends, you celebrate a birthday party with one of them or whatever. Oh, that's a bonus. Don't look for it. And I have that. And it was nothing that I expected.
No,
so
it's
for me,
amazing.
When you ask me that, it's everything within my whole kind of my nucleus, It took 10 years for me to do my doctorate. And some of my friends can't believe that, or family can't believe that it took 10 years. It was like, how the hell did you do 10 years? And I thought, I don't know. It was just I study a lot, and I love studying, and I love reading. So maybe that helps.
Yes.
But I missed out on a lot over the years, kind of thing, right? To do what I do. And they always ask me, and you ready for this? Why did you do your doctorate in clinical psychology? And I said, to understand my dysfunctional family.
Nadia, this has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like we've really just scratched the surface. So we're going to have to look at having, you on for part 2 and focus on intergenerational trauma. And in the meantime, thank you so much for your perspective, because I do think it's important for this podcast to have people from all different aspects and elements of criminal justice in order to have, just a better, wider ranging discussion. So thank you so much for taking the time, and also for sharing such incredible personal details about yourself and who you are, and your story of strength and struggle is honestly like phenomenal. You're phenomenal, and I appreciate you so much.
You're phenomenal, and thank you
Thank you
for that and the privilege to be here.
Amazing.